Bam! You're tuned in to the BAMBIZTALK Podcast, where we explore the thrilling world of entrepreneurship through the eyes of successful business owners themselves. I'm your humbly eccentric host, Angel Garcia, co-founder of the BAM Entrepreneurial Center. Each episode, we delve deep into the unique stories of entrepreneurs who've navigated the ups and downs of the business world to give you the opportunity to learn from both their triumphs as well as their challenges, providing actionable insights to propel your own entrepreneurial journey. So, let's dive in and walk the path of entrepreneurship together. Welcome to the BAMBIZTALK Podcast, your beacon for building business success. So, Miss Yvette Hernandez,
yes,
owner of Mi Cocinita,
Mi Cocinita,
food truck.
Yes, and catering.
And catering. Okay, so you do a lot of catering, and that's where it's at right now, huh?
Yes.
And it's growing. So, I want to dig in because I feel you have a very interesting story, right? Dig in is how you got here, right? It's gonna be, I want to find out how you got here, the story, the struggles, tribulations, the obstacles you had to overcome to get here, and then now where do we want to get to? Where do we want to go? Where are you going to? What's your vision, right? Mm-hmm. But first things first, tell us about who are you?
Man.
Yeah, that's a big question, right?
That alone right there. So I am a single mom of 7 kids, ultimately, first of all, grandma of 3, and I have been everything from just take it back, and I'm a abuse survivor all the way around. I'm a recovering addict, and there's just so much of who I am. I've just grown, and coming from a single mom of 3 kids, my mom just constantly was on her grind, even still till now, like always working, always supporting us, always taking care of us, being our mom and dad. I had a sister and a brother, and I lost my brother 8-9 years ago. And he kind of was the man of the house. So he was like the dad, the brother, the uncle, everything. So I kind of think when I lost him, it could have been a horrible thing for me, but it wasn't. It was, for years, I was like the bad kid of the family. Even the other day we recorded the Texas bucket list, and I was telling him some of my story, and he went and tapped my mom on the shoulder, and he was like, "Boy, I bet you it was hell raising her." My mom was like, "Yeah, and a lot of prayers." But my sister's younger than me, so my sister and my brother were me and my brother were best friends growing up, and then as adults, I got married and started having kids at a young age. I was at the house by I was 17, so I didn't really grow up with my brother as much, right. And him and my sister were closer. So to my brother, I was the ghetto sister. I was the one that, hey, you stay over there. You can't come with me. You can't hang out with me. You can't go places with me. And my sister was more, because she was younger than me, but my sister at the time was still a kid. But as adults, my brother would still be like, "Bro, you're ghetto. Things that you do." And I'm like, "Well, bro, we're different." So growing up, just that, I'm saying, I kind of felt like I was like the black sheep. I was the one that people just outcasted. I was the one that you couldn't associate with, you couldn't hang out with. And for years, it took me to realize, man, that's not fair. I'm actually pretty dope if you get to know me, right? And then I think once I started tapping into who God was, I started realizing I was set apart. It wasn't that I was the black sheep. It's just that God had greater callings and purpose for me, and not everybody could associate with me. And I couldn't fit in with everybody. I got to the point to where, it's funny because as an adult, especially being involved in things now, I go into networking groups, and the first thing that I feel like they look at me because of my tattoos and because I'm not dressed professionally. And then I get to speaking, and people will come around the corner and be like, "Hey, how are you? And what's your name?" And they want to know me. So I laugh because I feel like I'm one of those that I could just get into a place, and I kind of, for a little bit, and then after a while you get to know me, and you're like, "Yo, she's dope. She's somebody we want to tie into." Yeah. And I feel like ultimately all that is just God allowing me to find out who I was in God, and realizing that I was set apart and I was chosen for a lot of things. And I just move in that. But dealing with things in life, again, being raised with a single mom is hard. Yeah. I was the oldest, and so I had to deal with a lot of stuff that I probably should have dealt with, but I did. But a lot of those things have helped me, because being a single mom, there's things that I refuse for my kids to go through that I went through. I remember growing up from house to house. I don't even remember how many houses we lived in. I mean, every other week we'd come home and we either didn't have electricity or we didn't have gas, we didn't have water. There was times that we would literally have to, my mom would take us to the Salvation Army donation boxes at nighttime, and we would get stuff out of that. If we needed clothes or whatever, we would just gather bags and separate it, and this will fit you, and things like that. Going out to eat was like, if mom had extra money, we would probably go to McDonald's and Taco Bell, but outside of that, we wouldn't hardly ever go out to eat. And she tried so hard for us, so it was a struggle. So as growing up with my kids, my kids have been in one home their entire life. I started buying a house years ago, and they've been in one house up until last year that I caught the kitchen on fire, that we had to relocate. But I'll tell you more.
We'll get to that later.
Yes. I mean, they didn't know the struggles, you know what I'm saying? Like, they get to go out to eat when they want, and they get to do things. And I mean, last year again, one of the times, maybe towards the end of 2022, I fell asleep and I forgot to pay an electric bill. And I'm like knocked out, of the kids are like, Mom, we don't have no power. Like, they're freaking out because they had never been without no electricity. And I was like, oh my gosh, I just forgot to pay the bill. I'm going to call right now. So they were freaked out because they had never been through that,
And
so,
you was like, oh, okay.
This is normal.
We got this.
We got no, but so now I laugh because I was like, keep playing with me. I'm going to go hit the electricity switch. I ain't going to have no electricity. But they were like, the microwave don't work, Mom. And they were like freaking out. But to me, that was,
you did your job.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. You know what I'm saying? And it's kind of awesome just to see it, like, from where I was to where I am. And like I said, man, I've gone through some things, addictions. I mean, I was involved in a murder years ago. That kind of was like, I think that was like, for like 6 weeks I spiraled. I've done everything. I used to sell drugs. I was going to school at Kaplan University for a medical assistant. I was 1 month away from graduating. And me and my second husband had like split up. And I was still in school. I was still trying to figure things out. He was crazy. So we ended up having to leave the house. I ended up having to move my kids to crisis center for probably 4 or 5 weeks. And in the process of that, I just got caught up. I was selling weed, and I literally would drive back and forth from Odessa to Midland with 15, 20 pounds of weed in my trunk. And I would go down there, go to school, and then I would basically serve Midland and then come back. And I had been doing that for a while. And I just got to the point where I was like, I met my third husband working at Walmart, because I was working at Walmart at the time. And then things just started even spiraling worse. And then I got with him, and I thought, okay, well, we're going to make this work, and we did and whatnot. But fast forward, I, again, just caught up. I'm an extremist. So whatever I'm in it.
Yeah, I got
and,
you. Same way.
Yeah, so it's hard. And I remember, like, for 6 to 8 weeks, I mean, me and my ex were going through a lot of things, and I was like, I'm going to go do me. Like, you stay home and babysit. Like, I'm going to go do me. So I did, and I had met this guy. I talked to him for a couple of weeks, and he's like, hey, like, let's hang out. So I was like, well, I'm going to go to this birthday party. If you want to come with me, whatever. So I take him to his birthday party, and I had met another guy a week before that was, like, really crushing, and one thing led to another. They got in a fight, and a guy that I was with gets taken out the club. And honestly, I think if he wouldn't have came back for me, he probably would have been alive. But he happened to come back. He was trying to get back into the club to get me out because I was in there by myself. And when he came to the door, they shot him. And he ended up dying. And that right there was like, oh my gosh. Like, I had to go home and tell my husband, like, this and that happened. And then I'm getting a call, and the Texas Rangers are like, we need you at the hospital. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, and again, I battled with different addictions at that time. I was on Xanax, and I was like, man, I remember taking all these Xanax and just spacing out and getting to the hospital and dealing with that. And the worst thing for me was he wasn't from here. He was from Mississippi. He didn't have family here. And what made it even worse was the way he got killed. It went social media everywhere. So his family found out without, even the police,
hadn't released any information.
So that was hard. So for a couple of weeks, man, I dealt with that. I mean, I stayed on Xanax, slept all day, and just kept trying to deal with it. And then because the people who did it was kind of people in town that you just don't play with.
Right.
So there was things that were happening to me that I was like, oh yeah, I'm probably gonna get killed pretty soon.
Yeah.
And I remember just dealing with that. And I had a good friend who was going to church, and she kept telling me like, Sissy, come to church, come to church, come to church. And I'm like, hell no, that's the South Side. You know, they don't like me on the South Side right now.
I can't step across the tracks.
I'm not going over
come
there.
On.
And
you know how Odessa works?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I was just like, man, like finally I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go, because I already, prior to that, I had gotten arrested maybe 4 weeks prior to that. I was in jail for like 2 weeks. I got out. Within that time, my mom would get my phone, and I told my cousin, do not give my mom my phone. She's going to see what I'm going to do, what I'm doing, and I'm going to get in trouble.
You're more scared of your mom than
yes. You is so I come home, and I remember getting out of jail, and I come home, and I hear my phone on the dresser, and I'm like, oh my gosh, they gave my mom. So I'm like walking through the house like, oh crap. So long story short, my brother, my sister, and my in-law, my brother and sister-in-law come in, and I'm like, what's going on here? And they're fixing to have an intervention. And I'm like, really? Like, are y'all for real? So she went through my phone, and she had handwritten all my text messages. And it was like where I was selling weed and just drugs. And she had all my stuff. And my kids, one by one, start going outside. And I'm not, I'm just like thinking, oh, they're going to go outside and play. And they shut the door, and my mom's like, this is what you're doing, this is what you've been up to, like you won't get your kids back. And I'm like, what the hell? What you mean I won't get my kids back? And she was like, nope. She was, until you straighten up. She was like, you won't get your kids back. So I'm like, oh, okay, this is what we're playing like. And at that time, well, because originally I started doing food 15 years ago. I had a homeless ministry, and that's where I started. So I did that for probably about a year. Every Thursday I would cook a home cooked meal, and then I would gather groups, and we would just go to the streets. I had tied into the crisis center at that time as well, Ms. G, and we had a bunch of donations for men, like even clothing, and they wouldn't service a lot of the men. So she would come and bring me, it was like the old storehouse on CBS 7 off of 10th and Whitaker.
Yeah, I used to work there.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they turned it into the crisis center, like warehouse. So they had these rooms full of like inventory. And Miss G was like, man, I heard you're, helping the homeless, like come and get what you want. So Miss G would give me all the men clothing, underwear, socks, t-shirts. And so we went from being able to feed the homeless to like clothe them and give them shoes. And so we did that for a year. And my second husband was in jail at the time when I was doing it. When we got out, he was like, I'm not digging this. Like, I don't like that you're out here doing these things and you're talking to these men. And I'm like, dude, they're homeless. Like, I'm just helping them. So I stopped my food. I stopped everything.
Was that your first time?
That was the first time.
When you cooked
Yes.
for a lot of people?
Yeah.
Right. Before then, you just maybe in the kitchen.
I didn't even cook.
You never did?
Never. Like,
what pulled you to do that?
I used to help with Jesus House with Pastor Donnie.
Yeah.
And I would go to him, his night strikes and stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
And then when I started doing that, I was like, man, like this is dope. Like to be able to give back to the homeless and help. So
you had a taste of the sense of your purpose.
Yes. So when I did that, I did that with him for months. And then I was just like, you know what? Like, what if I came out and did it once a week and gave him another opportunity to get food and whatnot? So then at that time, we were going to Harvest Time, Invictus, and we had a bunch of young group. At that time, we were young, 15, 20 years ago. And I had a lot of those people that I was like, hey, you know what? I'm going to go feed the homeless. You want to come? And they jumped on it. They're like, heck yeah, let's go. And because of Dawn and going to all these locations, I knew where to find the homeless at.
Right.
So I already had like a list in my head. So we would cook. I would make enchiladas or spaghetti or whatever. And then we would pack up the trays, and then I would gather the people, and we would go from spot to spot, and we would drop off the meals. And then like I said, within like a week or two, we were able to start giving them clothing and shooting. And I would make packs that had like medium, small, medium, and large, and would have like t-shirts, underwear, socks, and hygiene. And so we would do that. And so I would have that in my trunk, and we would just do that. So for like a year, I did that. And then I stopped. And then, like I said, after that, it was just like, well, I had another kid, so what do I do now? Like,
right.
I would just be at the house, and I went through a lot in my relationships. And I remember I was just like, well, to me, that was a great purpose for me, because I felt like I was giving back.
Yeah.
So when I couldn't do that no more, of course, I got like consumed in, okay, now I'm a nobody again. Now
right.
I have nothing to do. And
something's missing.
Yes.
Your purpose is not,
no.
You're not fulfilling it.
So I did, you know what I'm saying, just trying to figure life out. I was working, and then I've always been like the breadwinner in my family. Like, I might have been married 3 times, but maybe I carried it all. Like,
already.
It was all me,
Yeah.
majority of the time. I remember just thinking, like, what are we gonna do? So move forward, I got with my third husband. He actually was a little bit better in the aspect. Like, he was like, hey, you don't have to work. You can stay home. And I was like, I don't have to work. Like, what you talking about? I don't know what this means. I worked all 5 kids prior to that. I mean, through pregnancies, I would have my babies and backdoor be at work 2 weeks later.
Man.
Like, it was instantly. I couldn't just ever enjoy
Right.
my kids. I mean, by 6 weeks, they were all in daycare. When I got with the third husband, he was like, you don't have to work. And I'm like, all right, you know what I'm saying? Let's see how this rides.
Yeah.
Probably about the first year you have, like, okay, it was cool. You know what I'm saying? Then I started getting bored, and I was like, yo, like, this ain't me. Like, I got to move around. So I would still kind of like give back, helping the homeless ministries, or go do different things and stuff like that. But I used to smoke weed. I mean, I've been probably my biggest, I've had a lot of addictions, but weed has to probably been like my biggest one since I was 13, 14. Like, I was just this pothead. So, I remember we're sitting at home one night, and I'm like, dude, I'm so tired of Whataburger. And we're like, hi. I'm like, I'm tired of Whataburger. And I had cake boxes, and I was like, man, I'll make a cake. So I started eating this cake, and I think it was like on a Friday night or Thursday night, we make this cake. And I'm like, dude, I'm gonna start baking cakes. I'm gonna bake cake and post it on Facebook and see what it does. Okay. I was like, because if I got the munchies, I know somebody got the munchies, and they're gonna want it. So on a Friday night, I think I baked like 15 cakes. So I would get the box of cake and split it up in 3 cakes. So I would make 3 8-inch cakes. So that night I made 5 different cakes, flavors or whatever, and then I put them, and I would do the poke cakes. So where you poke the cake, and then you put banana pudding or jello or something, and it soaks into, it's almost like a tres leches cake, but in different flavors. Okay. So I did that, and I posted it on Facebook, and I think it was probably like 9:30, 10. And I was like, man, I'm just going to post it. So I posted it. I kid you not, by 3 o'clock in the morning, we had sold out all these cakes. And I was like, oh, okay. Look at that. I think I got something here. So Saturday night, we did it. I didn't do it for like that week. And then the following weekend, we did it again. And we were selling out on cakes. So that's how my original name was Delicious Cakes and More. Because I started with cakes. Right. And then
I realized that you're stuck there.
Yes.
Because,
At first, it was Delicious Cakes. And then when I started doing other things, I was like, all right, we got to put and more. Because now we're not just doing cakes.
We're doing more.
Yes. So we did millionaire pies. That was like the next thing. And millionaire pies, because of the drug history, the drug dealing history, there was a lot of things that I knew how to roll over. So I knew, like, hey, if I could take this and roll it over into this, and I could make this, and let's make money off of this. And so I knew if I could just double that profit or triple that profit, we're good. Yeah. And so that's what we did, cakes, and then we did pies. And I was like, dude, like, this is working. And what do you call it? My mom, my dad's mom, which was my grandma in El Paso, she passed away years ago, but my mom would always talk about her gorditas, and she was like, man, like, nobody has ever made gorditas like your grandma. Like, I've tried them everywhere, and nobody has ever made them. And I was like, you know what, hold on. So I got on YouTube, I watched a couple YouTube videos, and I was like, okay, I could get this, because I'm one of those that I could watch it and I just switch it all into what I think works.
Yeah, your way.
And so I was like, all right, let's try this. So I make them for her the first time, and I'm like, all right, Mom, here, and whatever. And my mom ate them. She was like, oh my gosh, these taste just like your grandma's. So my grandma had a hand to cook, and then my grandma on my mom's side always was cooking. She lives right half of Murphy, out the south side. So I guess in the old days, the trains would run by. So when the trains would get off, my grandma's house was the first house everybody would see. So my grandma would cook big meals and just allow people to come in and eat. And that's when she would serve them. But it was always through her food.
Yeah.
And I remember growing up, that was like one of the things. You'd go to grandma's house and she always had food on the stove, or she was always cooking, and she would invite people, or she'd be like, come and eat. And that was like her, I think her way of giving was through her food.
Right.
Like, that was her love.
Yeah.
And so I knew, I mean, like even with the gorditas, I was like, all right, I'm tapping into something. Like, I know I got to give, but because for so many years, I've always thought, like, what is my calling? What is my gift?
Mm-hmm.
What is my talent? You know, I would try this, and I was like, this don't work because I'm in trouble now. This don't work because I got this don't work, so I'm in jail now. There was so many things that I just thought, man, what is it? So that day, my mom telling me, like, these taste just like your grandma's. I was like, hold on, I need to sew.
Yeah.
The following week, when I'm doing cakes and pies, I do gorditas, cakes, and pies. And I kid you not, them gorditas took off. Like, I was like, oh man, okay. I did that. I say maybe 4 or 5 months. I mean, that's what we're doing. And we would do it Fridays and Saturday nights. And I would do it from like 10 to like 4 in the morning.
Wow.
And I would just deliver all over Odessa. And it was funny because people would be like, you're not, it would be like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, you're not scared? And I'm like, oh, you see Jesus rides with me. I'm not worried. I can ride these streets. I'm good. So we did that for a while. And then I got to like, let's add enchiladas. Let's throw that on the menu. So then we started doing enchiladas, and then the same thing. And I was like, dude, this is working.
Yeah.
Like, people legitimately are buying this food. And I just went from there. I mean, like, I would add little things. And it was crazy because I want to say that was in 2013 maybe that I started doing all this. I want to say 2014-15 I made that business page, which is Delicious Catering anymore, and I just started posting my stuff on there. And we got like this huge following and stuff, and it got to the point to where I didn't have to go to the trading post anymore. I would just post it on my business page, and people were already ordering.
Yeah.
And I was like, yo, this is
They was
dope.
waiting for you to
post. Literally.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, dude, this is kind of dope. So we ran with that, and then 2018, I want to say, maybe 17, I had a cousin who was getting married, and she's like, hey, like, man, we're getting married and we want you to cater our wedding. And I'm like, hell, I'm barely getting this down. I'm not fixing to cook for it.
I so thought you were about like, oh, cool, I got you. No. Okay.
And she basically was like, if you don't cater my wedding, we ain't having food. And I'm like,
y'all gotta have food. Come on.
Like, you really gonna do this? So I went to sit down with her and her husband, her fiance, and she's like telling me, yeah, cousin, we want this. Well, they wanted brisket, asado, green beef enchiladas, red cheese enchiladas, rice, beans, macaroni salad, and potato salad. And I'm like, are you really testing my skill now? Like, so I was like, all right, you know what I'm saying? We'll make it work. Okay, so at that time, because I've been in my house going on 19, 20 years, at that time, the electrical in my house was like off. Like, you couldn't run so much stuff on one side of the house because it would kick the breaker off and all this other stuff. So
how you going to do all this?
Yeah, so I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, all right, God, we're going to make this work. Dude, I had roaster ovens plugged throughout the entire house, like extension cords running from one bedroom to the other bedroom. I had like 8 or 9 roaster ovens just connected throughout the house. And I mean, because the brisket, so this was for 300 people. So I'm having to cook like 15 briskets and all these things. So, man, we got electrical cords running, roaster ovens, whatever. Okay, so I had an oven the day before my oven gets out. And I'm like, how the hell am I going to cook 8 trays of enchiladas now?
Yeah.
Like, man. I mean, that was like the most stressfulest thing ever. So they're getting married at Shack in the Back.
Okay.
And so she's like, man, they got a kitchen. You could borrow the ovens and all this other things. So I'm like, all right. But so, I mean, I have my family everywhere, like, do this and whatever. So they're figuring it out. So once we get everything kind of ready, I'm like, man, I'm going to go to Shack in the Back. I'm going to turn on the fire. We'll put these in the oven because they have the commercial oven. So I was like, man, I could knock out all 8 trays quick. Dude, I get to Shack in the Back and the ovens don't work.
What?
And I'm like, Oh my gosh, I got 8 trays of enchiladas and the wedding's in 2 hours.
Oh.
Like, what am I going to do? And again, because I grew up cooking, like I was a chef manager at Dairy Queen, the old Dairy Queen on University in Golder. Like, I worked there, and then I helped open the new Dairy Queen that's next to it. So I have a lot of cooking experience and a lot of stuff from back in the day growing up. So I was just improvising, thinking like, you know what? I'm gonna put some steam tape, like the steam pans on the thing. I'm gonna put water in them. I'm gonna put the enchiladas in them. I'm gonna turn the stovetop, because the stovetop will work, but not the oven. So I was like, man, we're just gonna do that. So that's what I did. I literally set those up like that. I set 8 of them, put the water, whatever, and set them. And I was like, by the time I come back and set my food up, those should be ready.
Yeah.
I run back home. We gather all our stuff. We get to Shack in the back, and we're like setting everything up. And we're like setting all this stuff up, and I'm like, man, literally the people are coming in, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So I go check the enchiladas, and bam, they were all ready. I was like, heck yeah. So start putting them on the line. We literally put the last thing on the line, and they were already lining up for us to serve them. Yeah. And I'm just thinking like, all right, like, here we go. This is my first catering, so we can see how this works. And I mean, they ran through the food, everybody went through the line, whatever. And then because it was for so many people, I just didn't know, how much food to cook and if this was going to be enough or whatever. So we ran through the line, and we're all sitting there, and me and my kids, it's funny because I go back into my pictures because we have our aprons and it says Delicious Catering and more. And my 21-year-old was like my right hand, and at that time she was like 10, I think. She was like, yeah, I want to say like 10, 9, 11, somewhere around there. So it's cute because I go back at the pictures, and they're like walking around these big old trays, like, because they have to take the food. Yeah, they're all little. So I remember, like, once the line runs through, I'm sitting there like, okay, we're done. Like, it's done. Well, people kept coming back, and they're like, dude, this is the best food we've ever ate. Like, these enchiladas were amazing. This brisket was amazing. And there was people from California that were like, dude, like, we're from Cali. Like, this is like bomb. Like, this food in Texas. And my mom's like, yeah, Mija made it. And this is her first catering. And they're like, what? Like, there's no way. So after that, I was like, okay. I know what else I could do.
This next level.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So then after that, we pushed it. Like, the caterings, we started picking up small caterings for like companies and safety meetings. And again, a lot of our business was in Midland. Like, we did a lot of the oil field companies in Midland for safety meetings and company meetings. And I was like, man, this is kind of dope. And I kind of expanded into, like, my ex used to work at Texas Soul Food. So he knew how to do a lot of stuff there. So we kind of started adding like pork chops and just doing different things, meatloaf, and so I kind of started a little bit there. Well, moving forward, I would have my downfalls, get caught up in the wrong place, wrong time. So that's when the whole drug situation, the whole going to jail, the whole murder thing, and I kind of hit a stump block again, and it was like, all right, Yvette, you move forward and then you move backwards, and with this whole murder thing, whatever. So I go to church, and when I'm going to church, literally, he's my spiritual father now, but he starts saying a lot of things, and he's just like, somebody is consumed in so much darkness, and it stops now. Like, this is gonna be the end of it. Like, you're not gonna have to deal with these things anymore. So the deal was that they couldn't catch the people who had killed this man. They had no right, they couldn't find them or whatnot. So I felt like that was my darkness because of all of that. I couldn't move around town freely. I couldn't breathe. I didn't feel safe with my kids. There was a lot of things that I was going to take my kids nowhere with me because I felt like if something's going to happen to me, it's going to happen to me by myself. Right. My ex would be upset because he's like, you're this. And I'm like, no, you don't get it. Because my ex was from Houston, so he really didn't know Odessa. Yeah. And I was like, Houston's bad, but Odessa don't play.
Odessa don't play.
And so I was like, man, so long story short, I remember going to church and he's calling all these things. And I'm like, God, it's me. He's talking to me. Like, I know he's talking to me.
This podcast is brought to you by Best Brain and Body, a center dedicated to guiding you toward unmatched mental and physical health. Imagine a transformative journey, finding solutions to life's challenges and forging new relationships with yourself and others. Through tailored coaching, brain health education, and lifestyle enhancements, Best Brain and Body creates a profound connection between the mind, body, and spirit for overall wellness. Best Brain and Body's holistic strategy extends from improving brain functionality to fostering gut health, designed specifically for each individual. The latest wellness research and a dedicated team of certified experts from Amen University and the Institute for Integrative Nutrition are the backbone of Best Brain and Body's commitment to community growth and success. Take the first step towards the best version of your life with Best Brain and Body. Engage with them online or reach out today and start on a steadfast journey toward health and wellness aspirations. Best Brain and Body, where your wellness journey begins.
The BAMBIZTALK Podcast is brought to you by our sponsor, Pachuco's Restaurant. Craving authentic and eclectic cuisine in Midland? Well, Pachuco's has you covered. Located in downtown Midland at the ever-so-legendary and iconic historic building at 316 North Big Spring Street, Pachuco's blends rich and unique flavors in a conveniently pleasant and vibrant atmosphere. Enjoy the highest quality barbecue, savory tacos, burgers, and a variety of other mouth-watering dishes that reflect the spirit of a true Pachuco cuisine. Real, authentic, and just plain different. Check out their menu at www.pachucos432.com or call 432-218-8806 to inquire, or better yet, just show up and get your shine on at Pachucos, where heritage, exquisite taste, and hospitality come together for an unforgettable dining experience. Pachucos, Midland, Texas. Now back to the show.
Talking to me, and we grew up in church. My mom has always brought us to church. We went to church camps and all this stuff, but as an adult, you just stray away from God. And so finally he's like, if it's you, come up front. And I was like, it's me. So I go up there and he's like literally like telling me like, it's a wrap. It's done with. When you walk out of here today, you're not going to do this. And again, because I already had been addicted to Xanax at the time, and it got worse because I was like, what am I going to do? I remember like, he prays for me, and it's like this whole weight is lifted off my shoulders. I walk outside, and this is one of the times that I remember, like, when God shows you things, he shows you. Mm-hmm. And I remember walking outside, and it was like the whole sky was like bright, like this, the light was shining, the sun was shining so bright on me that I was like it was different. It was like this peace, like, all right, God, you got me. Like, I could say that was like one of the first times that I could honestly say, like, man, God got me. Like, I see it, I feel it. Mm-hmm. And that was on Sunday. I kid you not, Monday till Friday, they called everybody involved. And I was just like, man, now I come around. Yeah. Now I don't have to worry about these things. And so after that, I really, the spiritual father seen a lot of things in me. And he's like, hey, like, let's put you into this class and let's start training you. Well, within that time, a couple weeks prior to that, even before the murder, I got really, they took my kids and I still knows all this stuff. My brother didn't want nothing to do with me. And my brother was like, you're ghetto sister for real. Like, I don't want nothing to do with you. I'm cutting you off. So for almost 2 months, my brother did speak to me. He was just like, I disown you. Like, the stuff that you've done, you put my nieces and my nephews, because he was always big on like, take care of my nieces and my nephews. Right. Because these men will come and go, but they only got you. And so I was like, all right, brother. So fast forward, he didn't talk to me for like 2 months. So I'm going to church and I'm dealing with these things, and the spiritual father's like, let's put you in this. So I'm an ordained evangelist underneath them. And so he's like, let's do these classes and all this other stuff. So I start getting like, seeing things. Like, I can honestly say, again, this was one of the first seasons in my life that I could see and I could feel God's presence, and God would talk to me, and like, close my eyes and pray, and I would see the angels walking by, and I'm like, oh, like, God is showing me things. So I really got tied into God at that time. And I would message my brother, and I'd be like, hey, brother, like, I'm not your ghetto sister no more. Like, I'm doing right. I'm going to church. And he wouldn't answer me. He wouldn't respond. So I was like, all right. Believe you. No, he didn't. And so I was just like, all right. So I kept on grinding at nighttime, selling my plates, selling gorditas. Well, my brother he was the founder of one of the bike clubs, Last Kings, in the area. And a lot of his riders would buy food for me in the middle of the night because they'd be out biking and stuff. Yeah. So they would buy food, and, hey, how's my brother? Oh, he's good. And which they didn't really know a lot of the stuff that was going on. Right. So I'd be like, okay, so long story short, moving forward, I have 2 kids' birthdays on the 23rd and 24th of August. And my mom comes, I think, like that weekend. And she's like, your brother's coming. He's going to see the kids. And I'm like, what? She's like, yeah, he's coming. So it was like a king was coming. I mean, like, clean the house, get ready. Like, your Theo's coming and not. So I remember he comes in the door and he's like playing with the kids for a second, but he like looks at me and like instantly he's just like comes to me and he's like, what's up, fool? And he would always talk to me like that. And I would say, what's up? And he was like, I see you. He was just like, man, he goes, don't think that I ain't been watching. He said, but I see that the guy's been telling me that they've been getting food from you and all this other stuff. And he was like, you know what? He said, stay your ass off these streets. Yeah. And I was just like, I know, I am. And he was just like, and if you hit these streets with your food. He said, that's it. Yep. He said, but for real, he's like, stay off the streets. And I'm like, all right, brother. So I remember it was like we linked up, whatever, and I was just like, cool, I got my brother back. Well, 2 weeks later, my brother passes away. And I remember I'm taking my mom to church for the first time, to the church that I was going to. And I was like, Mom, you got to come see all the amazing things God's doing in this church. And then we get the phone call. And my sister-in-law, you know, screaming. And I'm like, what? And I'm thinking my brother beat her or something. And she's just like, he's gone. He's gone. And I'm like, what do you mean he's gone? Where did he go? And she was like, he passed. He's dead. And I'm like, what? And I remember I just lost it because I'm like, I didn't have him for 2 months. Yeah. I had him his entire life. And I didn't have him for 2 months. And like, I know it was like my stuff, my reason why I didn't have him. You know, so I was like, man, like, I just got my brother back. Yeah. I literally just got my brother back 2 weeks ago. And it was like, it hurt, you know what I'm saying? But it was like, it was a lot of things that I felt like God was showing me in that season. I felt like God was getting me to the point to where I was going, like that was going to be, I mean, I dealt with all kinds of stuff growing up to that point, but there was nothing compared to that. Right. And I felt like in those 2-3 months prior to that I was getting closer to God, I felt like God was getting me ready to deal with the biggest battle in my life. Like he was getting me to the point to where I was going to have to cling on to him and only him. Like I was not going to be able to go to the streets. I was not going to be able, like there was going to be nothing in this world that was going to help me deal with this great loss but God. And so I remember like, you know, the process of, you know, the funeral and all these things. And of course, you know, it was hard and all these things. And within the weeks, me and my ex, my third husband, were going through a lot of stuff. And we were already on the verge of like, we're getting a divorce. Like, this is not going to work. My brother was always big on like, fool, you don't need a man. Like, you kill it on your own. Like, he would always tell me these things, you know, with my exes and stuff like that. So he would always tell me. Like a man only bring you down. Yes, literally. That's what he would tell me. During the grieving, like, even the funeral, getting the funeral ready and all these things, my ex wasn't like emotionally supportive. Like he's like, well, I just got this job and I got to worry about me and blah 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 blah. And I was like, the kids, like I'm dealing with my mom, my sister, the funeral, my brother just passed away. And it was just like around that time, like a lot of the things my brother was telling me was like start kicking in. And I was just like, man, you know what, like, bro, we're fixing to be done. Like, I don't need you. So moving forward, the funeral and all this other stuff, well, after that, like those 2 or 3 months, of course, was hard at the first because it was like, man, I just got my brother back. I just got him back and he's gone now. And I remember dealing with that. And maybe 3 or 4 months after he passed away, I tried to commit suicide. And I was just like, I can't do it. Like dealing with my ex and dealing with the stuff that I was going on, and then my brother and my mom, and it was hard. I remember me and my ex were getting into it one night, and I was like, I'm done. He was like, what do you mean you're done? I'm like, I'm done. And so I went to the room and I took a crap load of pills. And finally, when he caught me, I had like half the bottle down. And he was like, what the heck? Like, spit them out. And I was like, it's late. Like, I already got half of them down. And he's like trying to fight me. And he's like, because I think I had like a mouthful of them. So he's like trying to fight me. And I was like, bro, like, just let me be already. Like, you already caused all this chaos. And honestly, I feel like if you wouldn't be here causing extra chaos, I probably could deal with life right now. And it was crazy because I know it was my brother. So my brother had these big old hands, and we would always laugh because his big old pudgy hands, because my brother was big. And I felt like this big old finger, and it's like at the back of my throat. And it's like my pills started coming out. and I started spitting them out. And I say I got like majority of them out. I mean, like I was like gagging and spitting them out, and my ex is like, they're like, get them out, and whatever. And I remember falling asleep, and like I passed out, and then when I woke up, I remember just laying in bed, and I was like, that was my brother. That was my brother. Like I know that that's my brother. And I remember laying there and thinking like, then all of a sudden all these other thoughts like, he would kick my butt. Like, what am I doing?
What was I thinking? Yeah.
Like, I was going to leave my kids here with this crazy man, for one. I was going to leave my kids without nobody. I was this, I was that. And I'm like laying there and I'm like, you know what? It's a wrap. I ain't doing this no more. So finally at that time, me and him going back and forth, and I told him like, you got to go. Like this ain't going to work. So we start the process of like splitting up and whatnot. So moving forward, you know, went back and forth in 2018. Finally, I split up with him. I think that May in 2018. And I was like, it's done. Like, you got to leave the house. We're done. So we split up and we're like doing good and whatnot. And then, I mean, like I'm kind of focusing on myself and whatnot. And he gets in trouble, and I think maybe this is prior to that. He gets in trouble. He gets locked up, and he's in state jail. He goes to state jail. So all these years of my kids, I've always been the breadwinner, right? So I've never been the mom.
Right.
I wasn't the one feeding them, cooking, cleaning, schoolwork. My exes were that. They were like the mommies of the house. I was the man. They were the women in the aspect. So I had it. And then with all my relationships, I always had somebody there.
Yeah.
So in 2017, when my ex gets locked up, I'm by myself. Now I'm having to deal with the mommy and daddy side. Yeah. Now I'm having to get them up to school and do the homework and do this and do that. And it was a lot for me. Yeah. Like, it was so much for me. Again, I go back to the streets and I get involved in some stuff that I shouldn't. And I meet some people in Midland. They're like, hey, like, do you know what cream is? Like, you know, like, and I'm like, the heck is cream? I don't know what that is. And he's like, man, like ice. And I'm like, what's ice? I don't know what ice is. And so he explains it to me and I'm like, oh no, like I'm a weed person, a pill popper. Like, nah, I ain't trying to do any of that. And he's like, man, at the time I was selling weed too still. So he was like, man, like you could make some good money off of this. You could do this and that. I'm like, yeah, but I'm pretty sure that comes with a heavy price too. Like, and so moving forward, I ended up meeting this girl walking down the street, and I would always see her, give her a ride, and I would take her places. And she had a little girl, and I was always helping somebody. So I take her to the south side, and one day I pick her up, take her back, and I'm like noticing different things about her, like her itching and her scabs. And finally one day I'm like, what are you on? And she was just like, oh, nothing. And I'm like, you're on some. I see it. She was like, man, like I got this bad habit. She was just like, it's ice. And I'm like, ice. So instead of me triggering and thinking like, let me try to help her, I was like, hold on, maybe she could help me. So I'm like, where do you go? And she's like, to the game rooms and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, man, okay, look, I got this deal. Like, is this a good deal? So I started telling her the prices that these people are giving Midland. And she was like, dude, you can make money off of that. She's like, we could go to the game rooms. She was just like, people know me and they come to me for it and ask me, like, come with me. And I have basically the dealer with me. And I'm like, all right, cool. So I go get some ice and we start going to the game rooms. And man, it's like quick. I mean, so quick in these game rooms, and it's just going and going. And I'm like, dude, I'm making more money off of this than selling weed, and I'm having to sell a lot of weed to get to this. Yeah. And then I kind of see like they're just going like, meth addicts are different. You know, I mean, you have your horrible meth addicts, and then you have your meth addicts that are just functioning addicts that could function and act like nothing's ever wrong with them. So because I was already selling food at nighttime from 10 to 4 o'clock in the morning, I was always up. So we're at the game rooms, whatever. So long story short, she's just like, man, you want to smoke? And I'm like, nah. And she was like, it's not hard. You know, it's not this, it's not that. And she's just like, it's just this pipe and you just burn it this way. And I'm like, all right, let's try it. Boy, when I tried that, I was just like, oh, this works. Like, I'm already up all night. This keeps me going. Like, this works. So I started smoking with her. And then it got to the point to where we would go into the trap house. And in the trap house, I mean, we never really paid for any of our stuff. Like, we're girls. So people would come in and buy the dope and hey, you want to smoke? So we'd sit there and we'd smoke. And then I started really spacing out to where it was like, I was running 7 days on. Like, I would run Sunday to Sunday night. I wouldn't smoke no more after Saturday night. And then I would kind of like rest all day Sunday. And then I would start again and run for 7 more days.
Wow.
And at that time, of course, you know, dealing with my ex in prison, dealing with the kids. And I was like, this works for me. And like, I'm able to take them to practice. I'm able to do this. I'm able to do that. Like, my kids are in school on time. Everything's working.
Yeah.
I'm doing laundry. Like, they're getting fed. Like, I was a functioning addict.
Right.
So within that time, Curbside Bistro, Stephanie and Alex, they used to buy menudo and stuff like that for me. And they would like support my little hustle and stuff. Stephanie calls me one day and she's like, hey, like, we got some good news. She was just like, but nobody knows. And I was like, what? And she's like, we're going to open a restaurant. She was just like, and we want you to come and be a part of our restaurant. And I'm like, I'll think about it. You know what I'm saying? Because I had my own hustle and my own stuff too. So I was just like, we'll think about it. And then too, because I was already on dope. So I was like, I don't know. And so she kept on, you know, hey, like, well, you could come and we're going to start at the food truck. You could start working at the food truck and then into the restaurant. And I was like, all right. So finally, I'm like, man, just do it. Like, to me, I wasn't thinking of like, oh, I'm going to build something. I'm thinking, oh, it's more money for my habits and more money to do what I got to do.
Entrepreneurs and small business owners, are you searching for ways of taking your business to the next level? BAM is your answer. We specialize in crafting high-performance marketing strategies that put your brand front and center right in the palm of your customers' hands. Not only can we create a premium website full of features that optimize your social media and digital marketing presence, but we ensure that your brand gets multiple views from your target audience and even those visiting your competition. BAM is your go-to solution in the Permian Basin. But we're not just about digital and social media marketing. We're a one-stop shop offering a spectrum of services including business mentorship, strategic planning, market research, and access to capital. That's right. We can get you funding to expand your business. With BAM, you're not just getting a service, you're gaining a partner committed to your growth for the life of your business. Our team of experts in small business development will be with you every step of the way, offering the guidance, support, and services you need. So why wait? Kickstart your journey to success today. Call us to set up a free consultation and discover how BAM can help your business soar above the rest. 432-247-8840. Call today and get your business launched.
So I go work for them at the food truck for a couple months, and things get worse because more money, more problems in reality. I'm still at the game rooms. I'm still doing what I'm not supposed to be doing. Like, my car gets stolen one night. I'm like, God, like, if you give me my car back, I won't do this no more. And it didn't work. My son comes home walking one day from school and I lose him for like hours because I think at that time he's probably 12. And I guess he lost his way home. He couldn't figure out because he never had walked home. And because I wasn't there to pick him up, you know, I lose him. And it's the same thing. God, if I find my son, and didn't work. All these things, you know, my mom, I would come home at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. Because what I would do is I would take care of my kids, make sure they were good, and put them in bed 9 or 10 o'clock. And then when they would be in bed, I was out in the streets. Wow. Yeah. And I would come home. If I was in the area at 3 or 4 o'clock, I would check down to them, make sure they were asleep, and then I would be gone again. And it got to a point to where I'd come home and my mom would be sitting in my driveway and she'd be like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm getting high. Like, what are you doing here? Like, go home. And she's like, no, like, you got the kids here by themselves. And I'm like, they're good. They're good. I already checked on them. And she was battling a lot with me. So I remember we had came to the conclusion of like, you're going to rehab. Like, I'm not doing this with you no more. You're going to rehab. And my mom is a very spiritually powerful prayer everywhere. And she was like, you know, I'm praying and things are going to change. And so finally at that point, she was like, prayer's not working. Like, you're going to rehab. I'm not going to rehab. Like, I'll figure this out on my own. And so we're going. And I go to work one day and Stephanie's like, hey, can I talk to you? And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, what's going on? And I'm like, my mom had went to her and my mom had basically told her, you know, she's on meth and like, I can't do nothing no more for her. Like, I'm going to have to send her to rehab or something. So Stephanie's like, what do we got to do? Like, what is it? And I'm like, dude, I gotta stay off these streets. Like, again, I'm an extremist. When I go above and this, it's a wrap. And I'm like, I gotta stay off the streets. So she's just like, all right, look, here's the keys to the restaurant. She was just like, go start working on the restaurant. At that time, it was Cherries and Pies. And so Cherries and Pies just shut down and walked out, left everything there. I mean, food, everything there. So this restaurant needed to be clean inside and out. So she's just like, here's the keys. Go to the restaurant. She was just like, start cleaning, start working on the restaurant. We'll pay you, blah, blah. I was like, all right. So for a couple of days, I still was doing what I was doing. I'd go to the restaurant and go back and forth. My mom literally was like, go to work all day. And then my mom would get out of work and she'd go to the restaurant with me. Yeah. So from like literally from sunup to sundown, I'd be at the restaurant. And then, I was still smoking because I was a functioning addict. My mom never really knew. So as long as I just kept on and kept on. But it got to the point to where I was like getting closer and closer to where like, man, I really don't need this. Like, I probably should just slow down. So I started slowing down little by little. And then I would get out of work. When we clean till 2, sometimes 2 o'clock in the morning. And then I was like, I'm tired. I'm ready to go to bed. So I would sleep. And then the same thing. So I would say it was October 13th is when they opened on a Friday. So that whole week I was already dealing with things. And I was like, man, like, I'm just going to stop. On a Sunday, I go to the game room. I'm like, man, I'm just going to go play the games for a little bit. So I go to the game room. I meet this guy, somebody I knew. He's like, yo, I got some dope. He was just like, it's from Dallas. It's some fire dope. And I'm like, no, I'm good. Like, I'm going to stop today. Like, this is one of those days. And it's like how the enemy works. Like, hey, like, come and try it. And hey, this. And so I take him. He's like, will you just give me a ride home? And I'm like, yeah. So I take him home and it's on Golden and 40th. And I pull up to his house and he's getting out. And he's just like, hey, like, you want to like just take a hit? And I'm like, I'm good. And he keeps on until finally I'm like, all right, cool. So I take a hit. Boy, I kid you not. I wake up probably a couple hours later in my driveway. And I had this couple living with me that was like staying there. And it was crazy because the whole environment, bringing in stuff into my house, they were crackheads. And one of them was a good friend of mine. And so I was trying to, actually my godmother. So I was trying to help them. So they were living with me. And so I'm like, I wake up and I remember just hearing somebody and I'm knocking my window and I'm like this. And so I get up and I'm like looking around and I'm like, I'm home.
How'd I get home? Yeah.
And he's like, knocked on the window, open the door. I'm like, what? And he's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And I'm like, I don't even know how I got here. I was just on 40th and Golden. He's like, nah, you've been asleep outside in the car. And I'm like, no, I know where I was at. So when I wake up, it's like the high triggered and I'm spazzing out. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what am I going to do? And this is that. And I'm freaking out. And I'm like, call my mom. And because they were doing crack, he was like, hey,
call your mom.
Yeah. And I'm like, call my mom. Like, something's not right. Like, I could feel like my head, like all these thoughts. And it was just a horrible high. And I remember pacing back and forth and I'm like crying and I'm like, where are my kids? And he's like, they're at school. And I'm like, I need my kids and call my mom. And he's like, nah, bro. He was just like, you got to chill. So I would sit down and like my heart was racing and it was just this horrible high. I remember going back into my room and I'm like laying there and I'm crawling up in a ball and I'm like crying. And I'm like, God, like, take this away. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I was going to stop and I don't know why. And I'm like talking to God and like, God, if you take this away, I'll never do it. I'll never do it. Like, you got my sincere promise this time. Like, there's no jokes. Like, please take this away because it was a horrible high. And I guess I fell asleep. So when I wake up the next couple hours later or whatever, I wake up and I'm like, oh God, like it worked. Like, I'm not high no more. So I wake up, whoa. I had scared the people that were living with me because they were like, crap, she's going to call the mom, her cops, the somebody.
So
they move. They take all their stuff and they leave. And at that time, they're supposed to help me like pay rent or something. And because all my money was elsewhere, I wake up and I'm like, they just moved out. And so now I'm facing a whole nother problems. Like they just took all the stuff. They're doing this. Now I don't have money for rent and all these other things. So I'm dealing with all that. Well, I'm going to work still. And I go to my mom and I finally tell my mom, like, Mom, I'm done. Like, I can't do this no more. Like, I'm done smoking. So that whole week we're working curbside, getting things ready. They're getting ready for the grand opening and we're feeling with that. So I'm just kind of like, I might have smoked that week I didn't smoke. And I want to say that was probably on a Wednesday night, because I remember like that Friday was when they were opening. And at that point I was like, I'm done. Like, this is going to be it. This was it. I'm not doing it no more, whatnot. So they opened and I just kept working. I would work with them and we kept working. And I was still like doing my stuff on the side on the weekends. And I worked with them and stuff. And I was like, I just can't do it no more. Like, I can't be on dope. This just ain't it no more. And then at the restaurant, it was good. So I'm a cook. I love to cook. Like, I love customer service and stuff like that. But I'm a cook. Our head cook at the time, it was funny. It was like, you know what I mean? As a chef now, I know, like, this is my kitchen, which I'm not like that in reality, but I am.
Yeah, you gotta be.
Yes. So at that time I was just like, he doesn't like me. I'm a girl and he don't want me stepping on his toes, because I'm a fast learner. All I have to do is sit there and watch things and I start picking up.
Right.
So I feel like that's an intimidation for some men.
For sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Especially in the kitchen, to step in and you know, it's a different thing. So we would bump heads. So I remember one day, Stephanie, it's like, we bump heads and he basically tells him it's either her or me.
Right.
Like, I'm not doing this. Which, of course, to me, I feel like they're going to choose him because he had been with them since they opened. That was like their head chef.
Right.
So Stephanie's like, calls me. I remember we're sitting in the dining room. She calls me to the dining room and she's like, you know, like, we want you here, but we're just going to move you to the front. And I'm like,
I ain't no front.
Okay, you know, because again, they had helped me and all these other things. I felt like, you know what, I'll make it work.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting there, and this is a conversation that I was going through in my head, because we go to curbside every once in a while. So I'm go to the bathroom and curbside to take a selfie maybe like a month ago. And I'm like tripping out because I go backtrack to taking a selfie when I was on dope in that same bathroom.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I went back because I remember that day, that conversation, Stephanie's like telling me like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I'm like, dude, I'm going to own a food truck. Like, I'm going to own a food truck. Like, I know where I want to go. And so we're talking with her. So I go work. We do the front. Man, it probably lasted like a month. And I was just like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
Like, the same. And I remember one day I'm like cleaning in the dining room. And I'm like battling. Like, man, if I quit, if I this, if I that. And I'm like, but this ain't me no more. Like, I'm not going to be up front. My mom walks in with flowers. She walks straight to me, and my mom's this type that she always just shows up randomly with flowers or something for us. And she walks in, and when she looks at me, she literally tells me, it's done. Finish your shift, and you're done. And I was just like, to me, that was confirmation. Like, it's time to go. So I left, and then within that time, I just went back to food again, like doing my like strong, hustling my food, and then I was doing caterings and doing stuff like that. Moving forward, I was like, I knew at some point I was going to open a food truck.
Yeah. Like,
I knew it. So what I started doing was like, I started like Googling different things from like Chicago, California, Arizona, New Mexico.
The hot spots.
And I just started getting like this food bank in my head of different things that I wanted to do. So randomly, you know, selling food at nighttime, I would throw them out. Carne asada loaded fries. That's something in reality not many people were doing here yet.
Right.
So when I would throw them out, people would be like, oh, these are dope.
Yeah.
I would do bacon wrap burritos, loaded bacon wrap burritos. I did that. Quesadillas, just like the hot Cheetos. So our thing is like hot Cheetos. We like to put hot Cheetos on everything. So I started doing that. So I just started building these things up. And then I would take it away and people were like, when are you going to make this again? And I'm like, oh, I will soon. But I didn't want to make it a consistent thing because I didn't want people to start taking my ideas in reality. And so I would just keep that in keep. So moving forward in 2021, so you're not allowed to sell food in your house. Like you can't do that. Like it's a no-no. The health department, I felt, probably had been trying to like, we're going to catch her, right? Because I've been doing it for probably 6-7 years at that time. Yeah. So in 2021, getting my kids ready for school, whatever. So I go to the health department to get shot records. And I'm sitting in the health department. And when I come out, the health inspector comes and she taps on my window. And I'm like, I'm caught.
Here we go.
That's it. Like, I knew. And so she's like, are you Yvette Hernandez? Or she said, are you Yvette Nicole? Are you Yvette Dominguez, a.k.a. Yvette Nicole on Facebook? And I'm like, yeah, that's me. And she's like, you know, we've been trying to get a hold of you for all these years. She goes, so this is your warning. You are not allowed to sell food. You are not allowed to do this and that. Well, in 2020, I had came across this food truck. This guy who was a friend of mine sold it to me. I needed a lot of work, but I was like, man, I'm gonna do it. So I bought this food truck in December of 2020, and it was in my backyard, and I was gonna work at it. I was gonna work at it, fixing it. Well, then that's when I did the Latina entrepreneurship. So I was like, man, if I win this money will go to the food truck. And so I won that. So the money went to the food truck to try to fix the food truck. So we were making steps, but it wasn't nothing to say like, oh, I could open next week. Excuse me. So in that time, I still had to keep selling food and keep doing stuff because food has been my source of income this entire time. So when she tells me that, I'm like laughing because I'm just like, well, I got caught. But she's like, well, if we catch it, I'm like, well, I got a food truck in my backyard. I'm fixing, like, I'm eventually going to open a food truck. And she was like, but if we catch you in the house, and I was like, well, I got to working, so catch me when you can. You got to catch me if you catch me, then if, you know what I'm saying? And then I said, I'm going to still keep working.
Right.
And I'm very, like, I'm nice, but I'm very, like, once you push me, like, boy, don't play with me. Yeah. So I was in that mentality of, like, catch me when you catch me. Like, I'm a single mom, and in order for me to keep working and build this food truck, I got to keep working.
Right.
So I remember going home. Well, within that time, I had people that wanted to invest in me. Like my sister already had told me prior, like, hey, we'll give you so much buying a food truck and we'll help you, or we'll put it into this food truck. I had a cousin's kid's father. He had already been buying food for me, and he was like, dude, you got to do something. You got to do something. And then I had another cousin that was just like, we went to Miami like the year before for a summer trip. And man, in Miami had me so, I think when I went to Miami, was at that point that I was like, oh yeah, I'm doing something. Yeah. Because in Miami, they have like itty bitty food vendor things. Yeah. And these people are running full menus on these things. I mean, the restaurants are like small restaurants, but they're banging. Right. And like the simplicity of these restaurants. And so I came back from Miami like, oh yeah, we're about to turn up. Yeah. Like I'm about to figure something out. So my cousin that was with me in Miami already had told me like, find a building. But I don't want a building. I didn't want a restaurant, and I still don't want a restaurant because people are like, are you getting nope, I don't want one. So I was just like, man, we're going to figure it out. So after the health department incident, I really am like, I'm stubborn, and I'm like, I'm going to keep selling food. But the back of my mind is if I get caught,
I got to get out of here. I got to go.
I can't do this. Like, this is one of those already, bet you got to step out my faith. Yeah. If this is what you want, you got to step out. So I message all these people, and I'm like, hey, you know, whatever. So, my cousin's spouse, kid's father, he's like, dude, find a food truck. You know what I'm saying? Let's figure it out. Let's do this. Like, you know, well, whatever. And I'm like, all right. Then that week, I start messaging, calling different places. You know, I'm checking on these food trucks. So the food trucks like in San Antonio and Dallas were like pricey. And my sister's like, we could only give you X amount, you know, and I'm like, well, that won't cover this. And I don't want to have to pay this person and this person back and whatnot. This person in Midland just hits me up, and he's just like, hey, like I got this food truck. We bought it in 2020. I used it. He was just like, but I have no use for it. He said, I'll sell it to you for X amount, well, whatever. And I'm like, all right. So I messaged my friend base, and I'm like, hey, you know, whatever. And he's like, let's check it out, you know? So we go. So one of my things is growing up, the color red is just because the affiliation, all kinds of stuff. So red has always been my color. Like that's my color. Yeah. So when we go to Midland, you know, when he shows me the pictures, and I'm like, it's a red food truck. And I'm like, this is my food truck. I know it is. So we go to Midland, we look at the food truck, and the guy's like, yeah, you know, he's showing me all these things, and I'm already like, oh, this is dope. Like, I'm getting a food truck. Maybe a couple of days later, you know, they come to an agreement. A couple of days later, he buys it for me. And I pay him back. He's basically, it's like, hey, you pay me back. I'm going to buy it for you ahead of time, and you just pay me back. And so I'm like, okay. So a couple of days later, the food truck gets delivered to the house. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, dude, we got a food truck.
Here we go.
And months prior to that, I had did a brunch menu. I had created a brunch menu, and I had hit a lot of offices in town, and I was like, hey, we're offering breakfast, like it's breakfast and brunch. So I had this whole brunch menu already created. So when we got the food truck, I was anxious. I was like, we got to open. I don't know what I'm opening with, but we're going to open. So Labor Day, it was Labor Day weekend. And of course, you know, Labor Day's hit and miss because everybody's going in and out of town. That's Labor Day, right? It's September?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, it's Labor Day weekend, and I'm going around because we didn't have permits. We couldn't be inside city limits and all these other things. I was like, let me find somewhere outside. So I'm going around to all these gay rooms, and it's funny because I'm back at the gay rooms. But I'm like,
rooms.
hey, I'm not coming to do dope no more. I'm gonna come and sell y'all food. I go to the gay rooms, and so this lady's like, hey, like I got this land off of 61st and Andrews Highway. It was eventually I wanted to turn it into a food truck park. You could park there. You could set up there and start doing what you want to do. And I'm like, cool,
Okay.
heck yeah. So we pull a food truck out there Labor Day weekend on a Saturday, and I was like, we're gonna do brunch. And so we opened up. I mean, we just like nothing, set up the stuff, loaded up, we opened up. Well, you know, we did good. And then the days went through, and I was like, all right, this is working. Okay, I could dig this. One day during lunch, me and Fires, one day during lunch, so the fryer that was in the food truck, it, like if you turned it all the way low, it would turn off. If you turn it all the way hot, it would start smoking. So it was like iffy. So you got to play with it. So we do lunch rush. We're sitting there during lunch, whatever. And me and my friends, it was my two of my friends, and then like my girls, my oldest kids were there with me. So we're sitting outside and we're like taking a break, and all of a sudden you see the smoke coming off the food truck, and somebody's like, the food truck's on fire. And I'm like, what? And dude, the fryer had caught on fire. First time, not knowing nothing. So we get the fire extinguisher, we're trying to turn it off, and it wouldn't because the grease and this and that. And so my friend's friend sitting outside, and so he's like, get this other one. So he's the one, actually, we get it turned on, and it catches on fire again. And I'm like, oh my gosh, about to blow up my food truck. And so all that said and done, and I'm like, it was funny because it was like every day there was something on in the food truck. I didn't know how to trailer in the food truck, so I had to get dropped off and picked up to locations because I didn't know how to drive with my food truck. I would literally, I would tell my kids, food truck diary, dear diary, today I almost caught on fire. Dear diary, today I did this. Dear diary, it was like something all the time. And it was funny because it would be times that I was like, what the hell did I thinking? Like, this ain't for me. Let me go back to my kitchen and cook, but I couldn't go back to my kitchen and cook. Like, that wasn't an option no more. So I was like, I got to make this work. We got to make this work. So I just started just doing different things. And because of this food bank in my head already that I already had collected years ago, I was like, you know what, let's try this and let's try this. And then I was still smoking. So I would get high and I would get in the food truck and I would just start making things. And my kids would laugh because I was like, oh, here she goes again. She's making something else. And I was like, try this. You got to try this. And then they'd be like, man, Mom, that's good. Yeah. So then I would offer on the food truck. And then it would bang on the food truck. And then we just kept on. So that's kind of how I built my food truck, because my food truck menu is more of a munchy food truck. Yeah. And so when they come to the food truck, and there was people, they come like, dude, where's the munchy foods? And I'm like, it's coming back now because I keep it simplified. But I'm like, I'll bring some of it back. But that's how we built the menu. So we just kept on and kept on. And I started figuring out different things. So another thing is, originally we started to bring the food truck out to strip clubs. And so we started doing the strip club. To me, it was, hey, I used to be up 10 to 4 o'clock in the morning anyways. Like, I had a friend who was the manager, and he's like, come and try it. And I'm like, all right, let's try it. You know what I'm saying? So we were at the strip club Friday and Saturday nights, and we'd go to the strip club from 12 o'clock to like 6 in the morning, 6 in the morning. And man, we would kill it. And I was just like, heck yeah, this works. Like, we'd kill it. So we're doing that. And we did that for a while. But strip clubs are crazy. Yeah. And I have my kids would come out. My kids wanted to help me. So things started getting crazy to where I was like, I can't have my kids out here anymore. Like, this isn't the environment, you know what I'm saying, that they need to be in. So when I left the strip club, I really was like, that's what's kept us open for a year. So, all right, God, if I'm moving, I'm going to trust that you're just going to keep us moving. The following year, I remember like city permits for Odessa is hard. Yeah. And I was like, I would get the paperwork and start the process, and I would get intimidated. And I was like, I'm not doing them. And 2022, I finally was like, suck it up, Buttercup, and get these done. Because there was so many people that wanted us to park here and do this and do these parties and do this in the food truck. And I was like, I gotta do it. So when I get the application and she's like telling me to go through the process, and she's like, do this, this and that, I felt so stupid because like, dude, this is easy. All it was time. All it was me going and doing this. I already had half the stuff done on the list. So we pull our first city permits, and when we pull the city permits, like, it was like, all right, here we go. You know, we're able to be in city limits. We're doing all these things, and we're just active and moving and just building our brand. in 2022. Caterings blew up. We've, 2 years in a row, we've been voted one of the best caterers in the Permian Basin. So
Nice.
that was something else too that, like caterings hit. So for me personally, I would rather do mass cooking. I enjoy caterings. That's where my heart is. That's my ultimate goal. My ultimate goal is really to be one of the best caterers in this area ever. So that's my goal. So the food truck to me was a gateway to get where I want. I felt like that was like the bridge. Like I needed the food truck because it gives me the access to a commercial kitchen to do my caterings, and then I could still open it. So eventually at some point would be a two-stream revenue. I could set the food truck up, and eventually when the kids, I got, like I said, 7 kids. So I'm like, hey, come on, I need 2 of you to step up because technically this food truck's y'all's. Like anything I do ultimately is for my kids, the firm foundation with my house. Like, baby, when I'm gone, y'all have a home. Y'all won't have to go back and forth. This is y'all's home. The food truck, the same thing. The business, the brand, this is y'all's. Yeah. Because I don't want you guys to be left struggling. This is going to be y'all's. So with the food truck, that was like one of the things that I'm like, hey, so last year that was something that I had told them, hey, I need y'all to step up. Because if y'all could run the food truck and I could run caterings, we're going to be good. We won't lack. We really won't ever lack because caterings is consistent for us. So in I'm dealing with God. God always gives me words. And so in 2022, one of the words God was giving me was like kind of like, trust me. And I was just like, I don't know what I need this word for in 2023 because I trust you anyways. And he's telling me things. And I remember I give back to the community. I'm always helping the community. I'm always doing things. I mean, single moms, if they need a job temporarily, like a lot of them will come and work with me until they could get on their feet and at least give them money to provide for their kids or whatever in the meantime. And so doing things. So I went through some stuff in 2022, October, November, December, that I was like, I'm not in the community no more. Like, I'm just not going to do it. Like, it's draining. I think when people in a business, they think you just got all this money, you just could do all these things and you're rich. No, baby, it don't work like that. We struggle a lot more than not having a business now. So I kind of was like over the community. I was like, I'm not doing nothing. And I remember I'm cooking. I have these caterings or something in December, and I'm like cooking, and God literally tells me, take care of my people and I'll take care of you. He was just like, not financially, but encourage them, motivate them, care for them, love them, guide them, help them, take care of my people, and I'll take care of you. And I was like, all right, God, like, I got you. And I remember the end of December, things started opening. Like, once I started helping people again, things started opening in December.
Yeah. And that's a beautiful thing.
Yes.
Like, I say that, so I'm on the board for Meals on Wheels.
Yes.
We did Smug Bug, and you showed up with your kids, right? It was so great to see you there and you guys helping out. Right, giving back. Always, and the story you're telling me, it's really resonating with you, with seeing you there, right? Because you're a business owner and people are always asking things of you, but you didn't have to go there. No. You didn't have to take your kids there, but you're being pulled to help, right? That's your purpose.
Yes.
Because when you prepare a meal, prepare food is surviving. They're being fed sustenance that you're filling them with, right? And you're cooking them. You said you like to cook in mass. It's almost like, hey, you're taking this one basket of fish and bread and everybody eat.
Yeah, clearly.
So that's a beautiful thing. Yeah, and you're teaching your kids.
And those are the little things. So years ago, Valentine's, Easter, Christmas, Father's Day, and Mother's Day. My kids actually, we'd sit down and they would make handmade cards and posters, little cards, handmade gift cards or handmade, what do you like? I'm trying to say, like cards, I guess. Colored pictures, do things, and we'd walk through the mall, and we would just hand them out to people. If we would Father's Day, we would see them with kids, the kids would give them to them, and they would be so like, the people would be like, what's this? And they would see, and they're like, oh, thank you. And they were handmade gift cards and cards. And so those are a lot of things that I did with my kids. Like my kids have always been involved in something. Like my oldest kids are like, why do we gotta help now? I'm like, because y'all used to do this as kids. Come on, like, let's go. You know what I'm saying?
It's even more important to you.
Yes. So that's something that, like I said, we've always one way or the other, how with and even my younger kids now, they see a homeless person like, Mom, can we feed them? Mom, can we help them? Mom, can we this? And I'm like, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
I mean, they make their own money, and they're like, can you pull over? And they're giving their own money to them, you know. Meals on Wheels, you know, we deliver for Meals on Wheels once a week.
Awesome.
And
That's
I take my grandkids now, my granddaughter with me, to be able to take care of. I'm like, this is dope, because honestly, to tell you the truth, years ago, I didn't think I was going to, I honestly thought that I was either going to be a crackhead in the streets, dead, or in prison.
Right.
I didn't ever think I was going to see my kids grow up. So now that I see my 21, my 17, and my 19-year-old grown, and two of them out on their own, doing their own things, and I'm like, God, like, you're faithful, because I didn't think I would ever see this day. And then when I got to take my granddaughter to Meals on Wheels with me, and I was like, dude, this is dope.
Yeah.
Like, I get to take my grandkids now. I get to show my grandkids the same heart, and to give back to the community, and to help and do these things. And